Egyptian. The ancient Egyptians had one of the most structured beliefs about the afterlife, viewing death not as an end but as a transition. They believed that the soul embarked on a perilous journey through Duat, the underworld, before reaching its final destination. This journey was filled with challenges requiring knowledge, moral integrity, and divine assistance. The Book of the Dead, a collection of spells and instructions, was often buried with the deceased to guide them through the obstacles of Duat and ensure their safe passage. Central to Egyptian beliefs was the idea that the soul was composed of multiple parts, the most significant being the Ka, the life force that required sustenance even after death, and the Ba, the personality or spirit which needed to return to the body. The Ark, the fully transformed and immortal soul, could only exist if the deceased successfully passed through the trials of the afterlife. Because of this belief, mummification was essential. Without a preserved body, the Ka and Ba would be lost, preventing the person from reaching the next world. The journey through Duat was treacherous. The deceased had to navigate through 12 gates, each guarded by deities and monstrous creatures that tested their purity and knowledge. They also encountered various traps, lakes of fire, and serpentine demons. To survive, they needed to recite specific spells from the Book of the Dead, proving they were worthy of continuing their journey. This process symbolized a purification of the soul, ensuring that only the just and virtuous could progress. The most critical moment came at the Hall of Mayat, where the deceased underwent the weighing of the heart before Osiris, the god of the underworld. Their heart was placed on a scale and balanced against the feather of Mayat, the symbol of truth and justice. If the heart was lighter than the feather, it meant the soul had lived righteously and could enter Aru, the field of reeds, a paradise where they would live in eternal bliss. However, if the heart was heavy with sin, it was immediately devoured by Amit, a terrifying creature with the body of a lion, the head of a crocodile, and the hindquarters of a hippopotamus. This fate was worse than suffering. It meant complete annihilation, ceasing to exist entirely. For those who successfully passed the judgment, Aru was their reward. This afterlife was depicted as a perfect version of Egypt, where the deceased could continue farming, feasting, and reuniting with loved ones. It was a place of peace, free from hunger, pain, or suffering. The righteous could also travel among the gods, gaining divine wisdom and even returning to visit the living in dreams or spiritual visions. Norse. The underworld is primarily known as Helheim, the realm of the dead who did not die in battle. It is ruled by Hel, the daughter of Loki, and is described as a cold, misty, and gloomy place, far removed from the warmth and joy of the gods' realm. Unlike the Christian concept of hell, Helheim is not necessarily a place of punishment, but rather a destination for those who pass away from sickness, old age, or other natural causes. When a person dies, their soul must cross the river Giol, which is spanned by the golden roof Gialarbru Bridge, guarded by the watchful giantess Modguder. Those who died an unremarkable or dishonorable death are sent deeper into Helheim, where they exist in a state of dreary, shadowy existence. The lowest and most dreaded part of Helheim is Niflhel, a frozen abyss reserved for the worst criminals, oathbreakers, and murderers. Here, the souls may suffer eternal torment in an icy wasteland, quite the opposite of the fiery Christian hell. By contrast, warriors who die bravely in battle are chosen by the Valkyries and taken to either Valhalla, Odin's Great Hall, or Folkvangr, the domain of the goddess Freyja. In Valhalla, the slain warriors, known as the Einarjar, feast and fight daily in preparation for Ragnarok, the final battle at the end of time. Those sent to Folkvangr enjoy a peaceful afterlife under Freyja's care, though little is detailed about this realm. One of the most feared aspects of Helheim is Hel, its ruler. She is described as half living, half dead, with one side of her body appearing normal and the other side skeletal or decayed. She presides over the dead with a grim, indifferent rule, ensuring that souls remain in her realm unless commanded otherwise. Mayan. In this mythology, the underworld is known as Xibalba, a vast and terrifying realm where the dead were subjected to trials, suffering, and trickery. Unlike the Norse Helheim, which functioned as resting places for the dead, Xibalba was a treacherous domain filled with traps and monstrous entities. It was ruled by a council of sinister gods who delighted in tormenting those who entered. The name Xibalba translates to place of fright, emphasizing its terrifying nature. It was believed to be an enormous underground labyrinth, hidden beneath the earth and filled with dark caves, rivers of blood, and dangerous creatures. According to the Popol Vuh, the sacred book of the Maya, the entrance to Xibalba was through a cave in present-day Guatemala. The path leading into the underworld was filled with obstacles, including rivers of scorpions, pus, and blood, which the souls had to cross before reaching the heart of Xibalba. Once inside, the dead had to endure a series of 6 deadly houses, each designed to test and weaken them. The dark house was completely devoid of light, disorienting all who entered. The cold house was filled with unbearable frost, threatening to freeze souls solid. The jaguar house was inhabited by ravenous jaguars, ready to tear apart anyone who entered. The bat house was home to giant, bloodthirsty bats that attacked anything that moved. The blade house contained swinging obsidian knives that slashed at those passing through. Lastly, the firehouse was engulfed in flames, scorching anything inside. These nightmarish trials reflected the belief that death was not simply an end, but a series of tests that the soul had to endure. Xibalba was ruled by a powerful group of 12 death gods led by Hun came, meaning one death, and Vukib came, 7 death. These deities delighted in tricking, humiliating, and ultimately destroying those who entered their domain. Some of the most feared were Siquirapat and Kuchumakwik, who caused bloodshed and disease, Ahalpa and Ahalgana, who made bodies decay, and Ahalmez and Ahaltokab, who brought sudden death. These gods were not just passive rulers, they actively sought to deceive souls, leading them into cruel traps and impossible challenges. Xibalba was not simply a place of punishment, but a reflection of the Mayan understanding of the afterlife, a place where the soul was tested and had the potential to transcend suffering. The idea that one could escape Xibalba through intelligence and divine favor set it apart from other mythological underworlds. Mesopotamian. In this mythology, the underworld, also known as Irkalla, was a dark and joyless realm where all souls, regardless of their actions in life, ended up after death. The underworld was believed to be located beneath the earth, separated from the land of the living by a vast river, often identified as the Huber. To enter Irkalla, a soul had to pass through 7 massive gates, each guarded by fearsome gatekeepers. As they descended deeper into the realm, they were stripped of their clothing, possessions, and power, arriving as weakened spirits with no chance of return. The ruler of this bleak realm was Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld. Unlike many other mythological deities of death who acted as judges, Ereshkigal did not determine the fate of souls. All who entered her domain shared the same grim existence. She was a cold, unyielding goddess, rarely interacting with the world above. However, her authority was absolute, and even powerful gods like Inanna and Nergal had to bow before her. In some myths, she is said to have been forced into marriage with Nergal, the god of war and plague, who became her consort and co-ruler of Irkalla. Life in the Mesopotamian underworld was bleak and desolate. The dead were known as Giddim, ghosts, and they wandered in darkness, eating only dust and clay. There was no hope of escape, no reincarnation, and no reward for a virtuous life. All souls, whether kings, warriors, or peasants, met the same fate. The only way for a Giddim to find some relief was through the living. It was believed that the dead needed offerings from their descendants to sustain themselves in the afterlife. If these rituals were neglected, the spirits could become restless and vengeful, haunting the living as malevolent ghosts. Greek. The Greek underworld was the realm of the dead, ruled by Hades, and served as the final resting place for souls after death. Unlike the Egyptian Duat, which focused on judgment and trials, the Greek underworld was more about the separation of souls based on their deeds. To enter, the dead were first guided by Hermes Psychopompus, the conductor of souls, to the entrance of the underworld. There, they encountered the river Styx, which they had to cross with the help of Charon, the boatman. Only those who had a coin for payment were allowed to pass, while those without wandered the shores for eternity. Once inside, the souls met Cerberus, the 3-headed hound of Hades, who allowed the dead to enter but never to leave. Judgment awaited them next, presided over by the 3 underworld judges Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus, who decided their fate. Based on their past lives, souls were sent to different regions of the underworld. The righteous and heroic were granted passage to Elysium, a paradise where they could live in eternal bliss. Ordinary souls, neither good nor evil, drifted in the asphodel meadows, a gray and ghostly existence without joy or suffering. The wicked were condemned to Tartarus, a deep abyss where they endured eternal punishment, similar to Christian concepts of hell. Those who achieved greatness across multiple lifetimes could enter the Isle of the Blessed, even higher state of paradise. The underworld was also divided by 5 mystical rivers, each with its own significance. The Styx was the river of unbreakable oaths, sworn upon even by the gods. The Acheron was the river of sorrow, filled with the cries of lost souls. The Cocytus, the river of wailing, echoed with endless lamentations. The Phlegethon, a river of fire, burned eternally without being consumed. Lastly, the river of forgetfulness was where souls drank to erase memories before reincarnation. In Greek mythology, the underworld was not just a place of punishment, but a reflection of ancient beliefs about morality, the afterlife, and the cycle of existence. It was a realm where souls found their final fate dictated by their actions in life, and where gods and spirits played their eternal roles in maintaining cosmic balance. Aztec. In this mythology, the underworld is known as Mictlán, ruled by Mictlán Tecoli and his wife Mictacasiuatl. The journey to Mictlán was long and arduous, taking 4 years for the soul to reach its final resting place. Mictlán was believed to be located deep beneath the earth, consisting of 9 levels, each with its own challenges that the dead had to overcome. Before the deceased could begin their journey, they were often buried with a small dog, usually a Mexican hairless dog, which would help guide their soul across the river Apanahoakalhuia. If a person had mistreated dogs in life, their soul could be denied passage, leaving them stranded. The journey through Mictlán was perilous, as each level presented a different trial. The soul had to cross a raging river, survive mountains that crashed together, climb a hill covered in obsidian knives, endure freezing winds, and pass through jaguars that tried to consume their heart. In the final stage, the soul reached Wapan, a mystical river where they had to let go of all earthly attachments before entering Mictlán, the ninth and final level, where they would find eternal rest. Unlike deities in other mythologies who judged souls, the gods of Mictlán did not punish or reward the dead, they simply ruled over them. Most people, regardless of their status, ended up in Mictlán after death. However, some souls had different fates based on the way they died. Warriors who died in battle, women who died in childbirth, and those sacrificed to the gods were taken to Tonechi Hechen, the paradise of the sun god. Those who drowned or died from water-related causes were sent to Tlilocan, a lush and beautiful paradise ruled by the rain god Tlaloc. Stillborn babies went to Chichiwakuako, where they were nourished by a mystical tree until they were reborn. Celtic. In Celtic mythology, the afterlife was not a place of judgment or punishment, but a realm of beauty, renewal, and transformation. Death was seen as a transition rather than an end, and the Celtic underworld was often depicted as a paradise or a waiting ground for reincarnation. The most well-known afterlife realms include Tír na nOg, the land of eternal youth, and Tech Duinn, each offering a unique vision of what lay beyond death. In Irish mythology, Tír na nOg was an enchanted island beyond the Western Sea where the dead lived in eternal bliss, surrounded by lush landscapes, music, and feasts. Meanwhile, Tech Duinn, ruled by Dawn, was believed to be the first stop for souls before moving on, symbolizing the gateway between life, death, and reincarnation. The Celts believed in reincarnation, viewing death as a continuation of existence rather than a final destination. The Celtic afterlife was about cycles, renewal, and connection to nature. Unlike Christian heaven and hell, which separate souls based on virtue, the Celtic underworld was open to all, reinforcing the belief that life and death were intertwined in an eternal cycle.